Okay, so let's unpack this. We're dealing with something that is, it's one of the most universal human experiences.
But also one of the most culturally volatile.
Exactly.
But
Public nakedness.
yeah.
Think about it. You could be in two different places on Earth. In one place, you see a person without clothes, and, maybe you're at a sauna,
Or specific beach, right?
and it just registers as, oh, well, a human body existing. But in another location, that exact same site could create a full-on crisis.
Shame, panic, even police involvement.
Yeah. And what's so fascinating is that those completely different reactions, they aren't arbitrary. They reveal something really fundamental about what a culture agrees the body is.
Is it just the container we all operate in? Or is it something else? Is it a potent social signal? Almost like a piece of currency.
And that contrast, that idea of the body as existence versus currency, that's our mission for this deep dive.
Right.
We're exploring how cultures where, casual nudity is totally non-sexualized,
Yeah.
how that re-engineers the entire system of dating and attraction.
It changes everything.
So if the body isn't the billboard, what are we reading instead?
And that's the central focus. We're looking at that exact valuation shift. What happens when the body is just a body versus when it's perceived as this thing that determines your worthiness? The implications for finding real attraction, real intimacy are, well, they're radical.
So let's start there. In these cultures where being naked is just normal,
Uh-huh.
the sources we looked at describe them as places where nakedness isn't sexual, it isn't scandalous, and, critically, it's not even that interesting.
It's just a deep form of normalization. It's similar to how we might treat, say, hands or feet in most Western cultures. We don't really think about them.
They're just there.
Exactly. There was a great analogy in the research, the one about the purple hats.
Oh.
If everyone, and I mean everyone, at the grocery store wore these bright purple hats, after a while, the hats just wouldn't be special.
You wouldn't stare. You wouldn't even really notice them. You'd be focused on the person, buying their milk or whatever.
That's it. And when the human body reaches that same saturated state, when it's just everywhere, it stops being a novelty. And so it stops being a distraction.
It stops being a performance. It becomes, like you said, just the mechanism you exist in, the container.
Yeah.
We don't spend our days thinking about the social impact of our skeletons. Everyone has one. It's just a neutral background fact.
And that is the core difference. In these cultures, the body isn't a resume that you have to constantly update. It's not a LinkedIn profile for your genetic strength.
Right.
And it definitely isn't a social credit score that determines your access to attention or respect. Because it's so normalized, it loses its power as a transaction facilitator. It's the vessel, not the treasure inside.
That makes a lot of sense. But I have to ask about boundaries. That's the first place my mind goes.
Sure.
If everything is exposed, how are boundaries maintained? We often link modesty or, covering up with respect and privacy.
It's a very common question.
Doesn't the absence of clothes imply some kind of open invitation or availability?
And that is probably the single most crucial misunderstanding for anyone raised in a clothing-centric culture. The sources are so emphatic about this.
Okay.
Nakedness does not imply availability. It doesn't mean a dropping of personal boundaries at all. The distinction is entirely verbal and contextual. It's not visual.
So what defines the boundary then, if not clothes?
Consent.
Yeah.
Communication. Think about it this way. If you see someone not wearing shoes, you don't just assume you can step on their feet.
Of course not. That's absurd.
The logic is identical. Boundaries are set by how close you stand, by what you say, by the history of your interactions. And most importantly, by respecting a clear no, regardless of what someone is or isn't wearing. The physical appearance is just irrelevant to that social contract.
Okay, that gives us the foundation. So let's get to the question that anyone in the modern dating world is probably asking right now.
Right, so how do they date question.
Exactly. If the body isn't the main billboard, if you're not swiping left or right on the packaging, what is the criteria? What drives attraction?
Well, the whole mechanism of how you choose a partner, it shifts. It shifts from this rapid, almost instant evaluation to a much slower formation.
So it's less like shopping.
It stops operating like shopping entirely. You're not judging a highlight reel in 3 seconds. It starts to operate much more like how you make friends or, find trusted colleagues.
You're forced to notice the actual human inside. I love that. Think about your best friends.
Yeah.
You weren't drawn to them because of a flawless profile picture. It was because you shared experiences.
Yeah.
Right? You survived a tough project together, or you kept running into them at the same coffee shop.
Attraction becomes the byproduct of that. of repeated, unscripted interaction. You aren't evaluating, hip-to-waist ratios or facial symmetry. You're noticing these subtle, consistent behaviors that only come out over time.
And especially under a bit of stress,
Yeah.
right? Or when things go wrong.
That's when you really see it. Can you give an example of that, like a common social situation?
Sure. Say someone is late for a meeting. What's the character metric you're observing there?
Okay, perfect scenario. You're not looking at what they're wearing. You're observing their character. Do they walk in, immediately acknowledge it, apologize sincerely, or do they kind of talk over everyone and try to pretend it's not a big deal?
Do they make a joke to ease the tension?
Or do they lash out and blame traffic? When they get frustrated, what happens? That's the data you're collecting.
The sources we read had these really specific examples of what defines attraction in this model. It's not about big, grand gestures.
No, it's all about consistency. It's observational dating. You're noticing the small stuff.
Like, do they remember a small detail you mentioned last week?
Exactly. About your family or some project. Do they actually listen? I mean, really listen, asking questions? Or are they just waiting for their turn to talk?
Sharing their lunch, keeping a small promise, being kind to the barista.
These tiny, repeated, trustworthy actions, that becomes the real basis of what's magnetic, of attraction.
So the physical appearance, it's still there, obviously. You're dating a whole person. But it gets folded into the whole package. It's more like the color of someone's voice. It's part of them, but it's not the gatekeeper. It's not the bouncer at the door deciding who gets in.
Which brings us to the inverse model, the one most of us are living in, which operates on exactly that principle. The bouncer at the door.
Right, the doorman problem, as the sources call it. And I can hear the skeptical listener right now. They're thinking, okay, this slow burn, character-based thing sounds nice, but it's not efficient.
The efficiency argument.
In our busy, time-crunched world, isn't the doorman model just faster? We save time by pre-screening based on looks.
And that's the perceived logic, which is exactly why it's so dominant. The doorman model promises speed, but the price you pay is depth.
In most modern societies, appearance is that doorman. It checks your physical ID, your looks, your style, your filters, before you're even allowed into the club of worth getting to know.
It's the first gate, and for many, it's the only gate.
And we see this system just everywhere. Dating apps are the most obvious example. Swiping on a face before you've even read a word.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's so much bigger than that. It's the pressure to have the perfect Instagram. It's asking, are they cute? As the first question about a blind date. It's even in studies showing attractive people get hired more often. Appearance is a fast pass for everything.
The message the system sends, loud and clear, is that the package has to be perfect just to earn the right to show what's inside.
And that has to come with a huge psychological cost.
It's immense. The system forces people into what feels like a perpetual audition. You're constantly monitoring yourself, how you look, how you're being perceived. Your body doesn't even feel like it's yours anymore.
It's your marketing department.
Exactly. And you're the stressed out manager who's always worried about the metrics and the competition, the anxiety, the burnout. It's baked into the system.
I mean, that's it, right? If your body is your currency, you're always worried about inflation. Or, being devalued or replaced by a newer model. It's a terrifying way to live.
Whereas in the naked and normal cultures, that audition at the gate it doesn't exist. Everyone has already seen the whole cast. You can't use your physical presentation to buy your way into someone's consideration.
That economic barrier is just gone. So you have to lead with something else.
Immediately. You have to lead with your internal qualities.
So if the focus shifts completely to character, what does that judgment look like? What are we looking for then?
It shifts to metrics of, I'd say, reliability and empathy. Think of it like this. Imagine you're judging a restaurant's food, but you're wearing a blindfold.
Okay.
You couldn't be distracted by the fancy plating, the garnish, the ambiance. You would be forced to focus entirely on the actual taste, on the character of the dish.
So the criteria becomes, do they keep their word even on small things?
Yes. Do they show real kindness to people who can't do anything for them? The waiter, the janitor, people who hold no power? That's a huge tell. Is there emotional intelligence?
It's interesting how much energy we spend trying to avoid that transactional mindset in our world.
It's exhausting. And if you extend that blindfold analogy, imagine you taste the food, you decide it's amazing, and then you take the blindfold off.
Right.
Does the presentation suddenly become the most important thing? No. You might notice, oh, that's plated nicely, but you already know the core of it. The taste is great. The appearance becomes secondary data. It confirms attraction. It doesn't initiate it.
Okay, this has been a fascinating cultural dive, but this is the pivot point for everyone listening. We don't need to all go start a nudist colony.
No, definitely not.
We need to create the same structure without the nudity.
Yeah.
So what's the practical modern translation of this?
The lesson is about the environment, not the clothing. You have to engineer the same conditions, and those conditions are repeated, low-stakes, non-evaluative interaction where a shared goal matters more than how any individual looks.
So you have to change the venue. You have to get out of the spaces designed for rapid, shallow judgment.
The dating market.
Yeah. And get into places where you just have to show up repeatedly and interact as humans solving problems together, not as products on a shelf.
We're looking for low-stakes commitment. Think about it. Places where the performance naturally drops because everyone's focused on something else. A consistent volunteer role. A serious weekly hiking group.
An amateur sports league, a book club where you actually discuss the book.
Learning a difficult new skill together, like a coding boot camp or a carpentry class. Anything where you're a team.
In those places, you're not leading with your profile picture. You're leading with your competence, your humor, your reliability.
And your weirdness. People get to see you make mistakes, get tired and messy, get genuinely excited. You become a three-dimensional human who can keep a commitment. That's attractive.
And this is where the magic happens, right? The shift in perception.
It's profound. Someone who you would never, ever swipe right on a dating app suddenly becomes incredibly magnetic when you see them passionately explain their weird hobby or show real grit when something goes wrong.
And the opposite happens too. The conventionally attractive person who can't handle a minor problem or is just kind of boring when the performance is over.
Their currency plummets.
Yeah.
Because the package isn't enough to sustain weekly interaction. The performance has nowhere to hide when you actually have to collaborate with someone. You see their real character. That becomes the new metric for attraction.
Okay, so this brings us to what I think is the most critical takeaway from this whole deep dive. And it's about intimacy.
Yes.
When the body is no longer the main bargaining chip for entry into a relationship, intimacy stops being a performance review.
And that difference in the emotional outcome is it's night and day. In the body, as currency cultures, sex carries this incredibly heavy weight of validation.
It's proof.
It's proof. It becomes this anxiety-ridden test that's supposed to answer, am I desirable enough? Did I make the cut? Or am I going to be replaced tomorrow?
It's a transaction, a test you can pass or fail.
Uh-huh.
And if you feel like you failed, that anxiety just confirms your own sense of, a lack of worth.
Exactly. You're seeking external validation because your self-worth is tied to your marketability. But in the body, as body cultures, sex is just an activity. An activity two people who trust and respect each other's character mutually want to do.
Not a test.
It's not a transaction where one person gains status and the other loses face. It's just connection.
And the research really highlights that difference in how people feel after.
It's huge.
People feel connected,
Yes.
secure. They're not immediately worrying about being ghosted or wondering if they were good enough or if the respect is gone now that the physical part is done. The emotional stakes change from evaluation to mutuality.
Because the relationship wasn't started by the body, so it can't be ended by a perceived performance failure of the body. The foundation is character, and that's just so much more resilient.
So to you, the listener, if you feel exhausted by modern dating, if you feel like you're constantly being graded on these metrics you can't really control, age, appearance, status, that's not because you're broken.
Not at all.
It's because you've been dropped into a system that is designed to treat humans like Amazon products, with star ratings that are easy to search. That anxiety, it belongs to the system, not to you.
That is the essential lesson here. For some people, that audition system works fine. But if you're someone who wants intimacy without the transaction, you don't need to change yourself or your body. You need to change the venue.
Find those spaces where you can collaborate, learn, build something, where relationships are grown slowly based on what you see over time, not what you decide in 3 seconds on a screen.
Which brings us to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with. It comes straight from the core insight of these naked and chill societies.
And what's that?
You can't choose a truly good partner by looking at them. You can only choose them by being around them consistently, by seeing how they actually operate in the world.
So what does that mean for your search?
It means the best, most honest relationships They aren't found in a digital marketplace. They're grown in the messy real world. So go find a community, find an activity where you're defined by your actions and your commitments. Find a place where you can be a whole person, where you lead with your competence and your weirdness, not just your profile picture. That's where the real connection is waiting.